Thank you for taking the time to meet with me today. I'm going to start with my interview process. What drew you to the early childhood profession? The main reason for me being drawn to the field is just my passion for serving my community and a job where every day I can go to work and I can make a difference. Additionally, I have a deep fascination with brain development, which really started when I had my first child. And as I watched her play and explore and just develop her ways of learning, I was just fascinated how, with her and other children in my life that were around her age, how their interactions with their peers and their interactions with materials really fostered and nourished that healthy brain development. And unknowingly at the time, really just through meaningful experiences that she was having. And so that really pushed me to want to further my education and get a CDA so that I could dig a little deeper into brain development and all that it entails, which ultimately just helped me to realize, how her interactions and her experiences not impact impact just the simple meaning of brain development, but rather like how that directly correlates to social interactions with other children and understanding of concepts. So the more I learned about this field, the more I just completely fell in love with just how I could serve young children and their families and really make an impact on their development and in ways that continued on for lifelong learning and success. Moreover, I've always had a really strong passion for guiding and leading young children from all sorts of different cultures and backgrounds. I realized early on, young children hold a lot of value. And unfortunately, society doesn't always respect that. And so through anti-bias and developmentally appropriate learning experiences and practice, I just feel that I really had an opportunity where I could help these children create a sense of belonging and understanding that they do have value right where they are, right at the age that they are at. Pairing that with my passion just for the developing brain, I saw an opportunity to get into this field and just make a difference through the investment in children. Much of our early learning experiences and development shape who we are and how we will contribute to our communities in the future. So through observation and learning, I just recognized just the desperate need to educate other adults on the importance of early childhood development. So I opted to join the field as an advocate and just be an added voice for the youngest generation in a way that can help not only shape their future, but shape ours as well. What do you consider to be your chief responsibilities as an early childhood professional? I think number one, the most important thing for me is establishing those healthy family relationships and partnerships through education opportunities where I can encourage and equip parents to be active members of their child's learning. And I think that in establishing these respectful and these reciprocal relationships with these families, I can grow my advocacy network naturally to extend beyond the walls of ECE and even enter other professions. And so by offering myself as a resource to families to learn from and to grow from on their parenting journey, I feel that I can assist them in creating these home environments that help them to support their child's development. So I'm not only meeting the needs of the families in my care when I create these relationships and these partnerships with families, but I'm also continuously branching out and creating ways to be an advocate for the industry as a whole so that quality education can continue to be on an upward trajectory in our nation rather than the opposite. Additionally, I think it's my responsibility to create learning environments and opportunities for children so that they can develop positive dispositions towards learning that carry on into all future learning, whether it's in elementary school, secondary education, higher education, as we prepare developmentally appropriate learning experiences for children that are based off of the children's interests. I do think that I can help establish those healthy relationships with learning that really will help children be more successful on their educational journeys. Moreover, as I carefully observe and assess like children's progress throughout their learning experiences, I feel that it's really important for me as a practitioner to be able to adjust those things to meet the individual learning goals for each child. I think it's really important to understand as an early educator that one of our responsibilities is understanding that our teaching practices and the ways that we go about teaching, it's not a one size fits all. And that individualized care and lesson implementation and activity implementation is really required of us in order to set children up for the most optimum success they could have in their early learning experiences. What is the role of collaboration in professional practice? Address collaboration with other professionals as well as with families. I view collaboration as critically important to gaining more knowledge and insights through not only partnering with families so that we can get a deeper understanding and a knowledge base of who their child is, both at home and at school, but through mentorship and regular attendance to professional organizations. I think it is really important to have the opportunity to connect with other industry professionals and share our stories and share experiences through reflective practice, so that it helps us, feel more equipped to face the challenges that we do regularly face in our field. It's important to help one another feeling less isolated in the things that we might be walking through with our age group. And just give us ideas for other techniques as far as teaching goes so that we can maybe get out of the ruts that we're stuck in. So I think collaboration is huge in that. Additionally, as we continue to collaborate as team members, I think it really helps us maintain high early childhood education standards, because as we communicate with our team members, communication and collaboration go hand in hand. So I do feel like the more that we connect with our team members, and a co-teaching model as far as sharing ideas for lessons and what we've observed about other children and how we might challenge them in their development is critically important as well, to help, just guide their learning process. So collaboration is definitely key within the classroom. Collaboration is also incredibly important with families. So whether it's an intake meeting as a child is transitioning into a new age group classroom, where you get to learn more about the child as their new teacher, that input from the family is critical in collaborating unique learning experiences for the child that are both culturally and developmentally appropriate and respectful. There are a lot of dual language learners in our care, and I think that one of the main ways that we could work with the families to help their child be successful is to invite that culture into the classroom. One thing that I've noticed that is really helpful for our dual language learners is not only having pictures of their family and labels in their native language throughout the materials in the classroom, but it's actually inviting those parents into the classroom to share more about their culture. So sometimes this looks like reading a book, sometimes in their native language, and sometimes this just looks like teaching us a new game or volunteering in the classroom. There are a lot of different ways to collaborate with families to help propel and encourage positive dispositions towards learning for their children. And this includes regular parent-teacher conferences, regular meetings when parents have concerns, and just always making sure that we're making ourselves available to meet the needs of the children and the family. What strategies do you routinely utilize to ensure that you are critically reflecting on your own growth as an early childhood professional? Growing into work every day, I feel that I'm driven by a moral compass to uphold my commitment to advocacy for young children and their education. That said, I do try to carve out time every morning to determine what can I do today to educate somebody on the importance of early childhood. I think a lot of what we do as teachers is, yes, we teach young children, but it's also our job to teach the families and communities that we serve, to, again, further the understanding of how important those first 5 years of life are, and how these learning platforms or these learning experiences set them up for success in lifelong learning, because we are building the foundations of the brain 0 to 5. And so as I go about my day, I try to keep this at the front of my mind in my interactions, my teaching practices, collaboration efforts, and just, building those intentional relationships with families. Additionally, I like to think about days or areas of my day where I really tend to struggle. In those moments, I feel like it's clear communication to myself that I need more continuing education, more trainings, and more mentorship. For example, I really struggle with coworker conflicts. I think when you are working as a co-teaching team, conflict is something that can definitely get in the way of extending quality teaching and learning for the children. So while I try to keep a positive environment in the classroom at all times for the sake of the children, I struggle to share my concerns when I maybe see another coworker not necessarily adhering to the high quality care standards that we have or even best practices. So I think knowing that I struggle with this, I regularly look for insight from administration and mentors to help me with things where a teacher might say, I'm just not going to do diapers today because I don't feel like doing diapers today. When putting that off on your team is not really fair. And also is a struggle for me because doing regular diapering is a part of high quality care. And so if we can't do the regular diapering, then we need to have a check-in. And so sometimes having those check-ins, I think I just fear the retaliation and the defensiveness that could happen within the classroom. So I'm trying to learn more and become more comfortable with addressing those things head on in a respectful way that doesn't seem attacking. But I do feel that there are definitely some areas that I could use improvement in as far as dealing with conflict. Moreover, I do know very well that there are some developmental domains that I favor more than others. So I love, for example, when it comes to teaching, I love teaching early literacy skills. So many of my lessons are impacted by early literacy activities and experiences. However, when writing lessons, I definitely would need to make sure to collaborate with my co-teacher more to ensure that I'm not just favoring one developmental domain and therefore setting the children up for failure in other areas of development. We want to make sure that we are challenging them in every area as often as we can in a way that is child-led and also appropriate. So I think just knowing that I could connect with that teacher on their strengths and work those in, and we collaborate and work together to build a really great lesson, we can offer diverse education for our children that strengthens all of the domains equally, rather than just focusing on one area. Briefly describe an issue that might be the focus of current or future advocacy efforts and explain why advocacy is a hallmark of professionalism in the early childhood industry. This is a big one for me. Inequitable pay in the early childhood workforce due to multi-impacted disparities is a huge issue in early childhood education. The issue is of dire concern for the early childhood workforce because as teachers continue in the workforce and they continue in not being valued for the knowledge, skills, and expertise that they have, this leads to quicker burnout. And it also leads people to leave the profession entirely to go to jobs where they can have less demand and make more money. So when qualified teachers leave the industry, though, that puts us at a deficit because hiring quality educators is very difficult because of the pay disparity in our nation, especially when it comes to early childhood education and all other areas of education. So, when we have these teachers leave and then we can't replace them and we're displacing teachers essentially because of the inequitable pay, we can't maintain state licensing ratio requirements, which is illegal. And so therefore classrooms have to close down. So when this happens, this turnover just keeps happening again and again and again. And these displaced workers, displaced classrooms, displaced centers, displaced families. And then we find ourselves deeper and deeper into this early child care desert, so to speak, that really just furthers the crisis in our nation of the lack of centers. And we just do not have quality teachers due to inequitable pay, but we just don't have enough supply to meet the demand. So policymakers and the general public have begun to understand the importance of early education and the impact that it has on a young child's development. So continuing to educate communities and government officials with the statistical evidence surrounding wages and the correlation between teacher burnout and the limited workforce will help create informed decision making with local and federal legislatures. So while there are various strategies to improve early educator compensation, such as stipends, apprenticeships, wage supplements, they're not always guaranteed or reliable sources of income, which is not always appealing to everybody. So while strides are being taken to move forward with publicly funded initiatives, most of this money benefits only educators in the public school systems or other federally funded programs such as Head Start. So there is still a large and a vast majority of centers that are private centers, nonprofit centers, who extend care, but they don't receive that public funding. And so it's led, but because of these other programs, it has led our policymakers and our informed decision makers in the government to see like equal pay is possible, but these are the steps we have to take to move forward. There's also an active push to increase the minimum wage for all workers and not just those in early education. And while that's great, it doesn't always solve the problem, just because, especially in private care settings, those wage increases are just absorbed by the families in higher tuition increases, which then that creates a problem. So I do think that advocacy about this topic is super important. Starts with educating our families, our communities, about the importance of early childhood and education and the foundations the profession sets for all future learning and development. So when educators and the profession can stand up in informed advocacy to further the quality of the care that the profession extends, and that how it directly impacts the care of children and families, we stand to make a difference, not just to accept what always has been, but create a future for educators, family, and children everywhere and show them what it could be like. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me today. I look forward to hearing from you soon.